We're now going to hear from Jonathan Stern, who is the co-organizer of this event and the former head trainer of Kitat Konenut.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Dov for coming out here. When I contacted him, inviting him to come speak here, I had no idea if he was going to accept or not. I figured it was a long shot. When do you hear of an elected representative actually coming and showing up at the event of the constituents, especially one as controversial as for Rabbi Binyamin? So I really want to thank you for sharing these inspirational words and joining us here. So it's an honor to be here today, along with such an impressive panel of speakers, friends and colleagues of Rabbi Binyamin. Now this event is both a memorial for Rabbi Binyamin Zev Kahane, as well as a celebration of the victory of Donald Trump.
Yeah, right on, right on.
Now, I've been asked by a lot of people, why are you combining the two? These are two completely different events. In fact, I got an email a couple nights ago from David Ha'ivri, David Axelrod, a long-term old-school JDL guy, very controversial today. He complaining to me that he didn't like that we're combining the two things. He said it was inappropriate. He says both things on their own are a good idea, but together it doesn't fit. He compared it to mixing a bar mitzvah, a brit, and a wedding together. So that's his impression, that's his opinion, he's entitled to it. I personally disagree, and I'll tell you why we decided to do this as a combined event. We just finished the holiday of Hanukkah yesterday, the Festival of Lights. This festival celebrates the victory of light over darkness.
Yeah.
Now, Rabbi Binyamin represented the forces of light, the forces of good. And his opponents, those he fought against and those who hated him so much, represented and still represent the forces of darkness. Those evil people in the Israeli government, the Islamic terrorists, the Jew haters, all those people out there who want to destroy us and who will do everything they can to suppress the truth. The same goes for this election. Now, I'm not comparing in the slightest bit Donald Trump with Rabbi Binyamin Kahane. Those are two very different people. However, the Hanukkah miracle was the victory of light over darkness, of the few over the many, of the pure over the impure. The Hellenistic Greeks that we defeated during the Hanukkah miracle, they were promoting a degenerate agenda, an impure lifestyle, the opposite of the purity of Torah that we represent, that Am Yisrael represents. They promoted the physicality, pleasure, hedonism, homosexuality, all the same platforms that the degenerate liberal left is supporting and pushing today.
Right.
And that's the reason why we see a correlation between the movement of Trump, not necessarily Trump himself, because as far as I'm concerned, he's just a shaliach, but the movement that put Trump in power and the Hanukkah miracle, as well as Rav Binyamin, because the Make America Great Again movement is based on values, the holy Judeo-Christian values that we share about purity, family values, strength. What made this country great originally, the founding fathers in the 1770s, these are the values that have succeeded in winning this election. So that's why we're combining these two things. Now let me talk about Rav Binyamin. I will never forget the first time I met Rav Binyamin. It was in 1993 at the Israel Day Parade in Manhattan. I was a 9-year-old boy just getting involved in Jewish activism. I was impressed by his modesty, his humble nature, and his devotion to Hashem. Over the next several years, I got to know Rav Binyamin very well. Whenever he would come to New York, usually accompanied, I must add, by Mike Gazovsky, Yakutiel, who's going to add some words today, as well as Lenny Goldberg, who's also going to be giving us some words. I would always make sure to be at all of his shiurim, his rallies, and his speaking engagements. In 1994, I attended Camp Meir in upstate New York. That's, for those of you who don't know, that was in the later years what Camp Jedel became. At 11 years old, I was the youngest camper. And I will never forget when Rabbi Binyamin Kahane visited us at camp, teaching the Torah of the Jewish idea and love for Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael. One very special memory I have of him was the memorial for Rav Meir, his father, in 1995 at Siegel's restaurant in Manhattan. Him and Talia were there along with Jackie Mason, one of my favorite comedians, Irv Rubin, the head of the JDL at the time, Nachum Shifrin, Fern Sidman, and all the legendary figures of the Kahanist movement. Rav Binyamin was instrumental in my aliyah to Kiryat Arba in 1997. And once in Israel, I attended his shiurim regularly. The last time I saw him was shortly before he was killed, when I attended a shiur he gave on a Motzei Shabbat at the Kahane offices in Jerusalem, only a couple of tiny rooms on an upper floor of a tall office building on Rehov Yafo, just a couple of blocks away from the Tachana Merkazit. I'm sure most of you know where that is. I will never forget that terrible day, 16 years ago, when I heard on Kol Yisrael radio that he had been killed. My first response was disbelief, then shock, then tears. We had truly lost a Gadol Yisrael. But what we need to look at is what led up to his murder. Rav Binyamin posed a threat to the Israeli government. He taught Torah, spoke the truth, and called into question the legitimacy of that socialist, secular, Hellenistic, and un-Jewish state. He called out their phony democracy and the incompatibility of Torah values with Western ideas of liberalism, hedonism, secularism, multiculturalism, homosexuality, promiscuity, and their twisted concept of love and tolerance. Because Rav Binyamin spoke the truth, his ideas were gaining traction in Israel, and he was beginning to pose a direct threat to the powers that be, just as his father had earlier. They tried silencing him through arbitrary arrests, beatings, defamation, and even charging him with sedition. I don't know of anyone else in the history of the State of Israel that was actually charged with sedition. Just as these tactics failed to silence his father, Zatzal, Rav Meir, they also failed to silence him. When it became apparent that their intimidation tactics would not deter him, they realized that they had to take more drastic action to remove him as a threat. During my time living in Hebron, I have seen the aftermath of many random roadside bombings and shootings carried out by Arab terrorists. These attacks are random, indiscriminate, and usually include the spraying of dozens of bullets into the targeted vehicle, usually killing all of the occupants inside, including children. In the case of the roadside shooting that killed Rav Binyamin and Talia, entirely 60 bullets were fired into the front of the vehicle, killing only Rav Binyamin and Talia, but not injuring any of their children who were sitting in the back of the van. Not one bullet hit the children. This was not the work of an opportunistic jihadi terrorist. This was the work of a highly specialized hit team dispatched by a government-sponsored intelligence agency. That intelligence agency can be none other than Israel's Shabak, the General Security Service, also known as the Shin Bet or the GSS. let us never forget Rabbi Binyamin's message. Never forgive those who murdered him, and never stop fighting to accomplish the goals which he set out to achieve. Od Kahane Chai.